Today we're with Liam Gordon, Managing Director of LMG Fire and Compliance. LMG are a one-stop shop for all things fire and compliance, and I'll let Liam delve into that a little bit deeper later on in the podcast. So just to introduce Liam, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. It's been a long time planning, and I appreciate we're both very, very busy people, but we've managed to do it finally. Tell me a little bit, before we get into what LMG does, tell me a little bit about how you started a career into this line of work.
Well, basically, we're both joiners, both from a trade background, and then we both went to university, I think, and then become a building surveyor. And then what we noticed was the sort of shortage of qualified door fire stoppers, anything to do with compliance. It was sort of lacking. And then when you was a PM on a scheme and you couldn't get anyone reliable, anyone who was accredited, it just made your life harder. So I sort of seen an issue and a sort of gap in the market, and especially unfortunately after Grenfell, where people, it's easy to do things wrong, and a lot of people were doing them wrong. So I thought, instead of whinging about it, change it from the inside.
Yeah.
So we set up a compliance company, and then we just made sure we did things right,
How refreshing. Yeah, I think it's interesting you say a gap in the market. What a massive gap that was as well, given how severe.
Well, I think it was a grey area. And I think even if we were talking 10 years ago, me and you, we probably wouldn't have known what the regulations were for fire stopping, for example, or compartmentation, fire engineers drawings. Yeah. It was sort of the dark arts, and it still is now. When I tell people I own a compliance company, they don't have a clue what I do. Yeah,
well, it's an ever-evolving set of circumstances, isn't it? I think 10 years ago, arguably, the regulations were far more... I don't know whether it's fair to say the regulations were far more lax, but certainly the application was far more lax. And the way that people did things, a lot of pencils have been sharpened since the...
I don't... you got to think, even when I was on the tills, for example, fitting doors, no one said there was minimum or maximum depths of using foam round doors or different ways of sealing door frames in. We just do it all the same way.
Yeah, well, that's something we've talked about across various podcasts in the recent past. But accountability is more than ever, and I think that certainly what I do, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you do. Although I've got a good idea already, is about accountability. It's about remaining accountable. Yeah, and protecting the client base. So, is it fair to say that you found yourself in this role because you saw a gap in the market? The entrepreneurial side of you got in front of it?
I think it was more getting things done right, and I think especially after stuff like Grenfell, making things safe and seeing the amount of buildings unsafe that I was seen as just a normal building surveyor. Just doing like condition surveys and stuff like that before I opened this company. I just thought, it's a lot of unsafe buildings. And, if you think I've condemned a majority of buildings in Manchester apartment blocks, but them same blocks have still not had anything done to them now, so it makes me drive every single day to just get things put right,
And that's interesting. So the inspiration is genuinely to get things done correctly.
I'm not here for the money. I'm not here for the name on the side of vans. I'm here just to put things right, whether it's care homes, children's hospitals, universities, MOD sites. It doesn't matter. I just want them safe.
Okay, good stuff. And that's what inspired you to start LMG.
That's exactly what it is. I was happy being a building surveyor.
Yeah. So tell me about LMG then. Obviously, this is your baby. You've grown this from the beginning.
Yeah. So basically, we're a one-stop shop from compliance. You give me a building, it doesn't matter. Like I say, hotels. We do a lot of hotel work, care home work, apartment blocks. AOE and stadiums and stuff like that. We'll do the survey, compartmentation or fire door survey. We'll bring the fire engineers on board. We'll get a strategy done. We'll do the fire assessments. And then what we'll do is we'll have a detailed report showing you what's wrong with your building, scope of works to put it right. And then the most important thing is at the end of it, we'll put the works right. We'll give you a certificate of compliance, and everyone's a winner. It's a one-stop shop. I'm fully accountable for everything from first day on site to the sign-off on site.
Sure. Great. What a product. What I'm interested to hear about is, obviously, you're doing this every day. You're meeting different people, different buildings, different environments. What sort of things do you come across that you sort of think, wow, what? How bad is it? Let's rephrase it. So, how bad is it? What keeps you in a job?
How bad is it? Well, you gotta be careful what you say, haven't you? I suppose.
Don't say where. And
I've signed enough NDAs, especially on buildings in Manchester and London or Scotland and places like that, arenas and stuff. Or hospitals that are unsafe. But it's the constant fight back. It's we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
Or we don't have the funds, or do we really need to do it? If they get an FIRA, they'll do the most urgent actions. They'll replace a couple of fire doors, but they'll leave 300 that are still unsafe, and not the compartmentation. We'll do that next year. Well, if you have a fire tomorrow, it's not,
Yeah.
And that's the main thing. It's like no one has a sense of urgency. I'm not saying all my clients, because we choose the clients we work with. So, if they don't have the same ethos as us, we don't have them. I say no.
Yeah, of course. You've got to be able to deliver, and I think the client's motivation is a big part of that. But it's interesting. So, I think we all see it, if we're honest, that there's situations where there are known issues, but they don't get resolved for financial constraint or for various reasons. But I think that's something that has to change. I think we talk about industry standards, we talk about accountability, we talk about the true value of having consultants like you, the clerk of works, for example. Yeah. Obviously the clerk of works gets more involved in the resolution of that work.
Yeah.
Once the scope's been agreed, etc. What positive traits do you see in your clients that you do retain that you would like to see other people do across the industry in terms of making buildings safer?
Reactiveness and accountability. They don't try and fight you on it. They don't say, well, they don't get, I've got a client in Manchester, or an ex-client now, who had 5 reports, compartmentation reports on the same apartment block in Manchester, and all 5 condemned it. Right. I'm going back to apartment blocks that I condemned 8 years ago that I've still not had the fire stopping done.
Okay.
So, and then I've got a client, for example, I'll give you an example. There's an hotel in Durham, listed hotel, beautiful hotel. The client rang me on a Friday night and said, we've got a 30-day notice on the building on our hotel.
Right.
What can you do? And I said, I'll have 14 engineers there on Sunday. The wife wasn't happy because I had to drive up on Sunday morning. Okay. However, we got that building completely fire stopped within 5 days, 14 lads, and kept the business open. And they paid us the day after. 30 days. Yeah. And that's just, it wasn't about the money, but it was about, you've just pulled us out of the shit. We appreciate you. And they paid it.
Yeah, and it's obviously fantastic that it got resolved. The safety of those residents, guests, whatever they are, is paramount. It's just, I suppose maybe a controversial question is, how do you get to the stage where you hit 30 days? Is always an interesting one for me. Don't answer it. It's a tricky one for you to answer because obviously it's something you're involved with. But it just I think when you look at the industry in a perfect world, we need to. There's all these legacy works that need to be resolved, which is good commercially, of course. That allows us to keep doing what you do, especially.
A lot of ours is legacy stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but then So actually, this brings us to the next question. New works. How much do you get involved with that, or are you predominantly in the legacy world?
This might be a bit controversial, but I don't tend to do many new build sites.
Okay.
You won't see us on one of the skyscrapers in Manchester.
No.
Because, no offence, and people won't like this, they've got a team as QSs whose only job is to fuck you.
You don't like the contractual terms?
I like the contractual terms if they were even, scheduler rates where you make 2% on them or something. I think, and because I've been that side of it as well, and I've been on that side, on the commercial side.
Yeah.
I think there's more reason for the big boys sometimes not to pay you, and try and stage payments, or if there's delays, or it's like you're under the cosh from day one, and I don't feel I could be wrong. We could start doing new build sites for some of the big boys next year. However, I stay away from it because I think I don't get in bed with a dog that can bite harder than you can. So
well, yeah, I mean, business strategy, one thing. I think in terms of the safety of the buildings, one thing that we've noticed now, there's a far more proactive, an absolute proactive approach to fire stopping on new builds.
There is.
The screws actually been turned, and the way that it's a huge focus now of a new build development.
Well, we consult on it. So, for example, I won't name a client. So, and it's a really good client of ours. So there was 3 massive apartment blocks built near the Mancunian Way this year. I'm not going to name who which ones they are, but we lost the tender for the fire stopping. But the client, in their knowledge and their wisdom, made us a consultant to sign off the works
as a third party check,
and it works so well. Then there was no animosity. So my competitor won it, and they were cheaper, but not ridiculously cheaper. When they weren't making money, they were still making a good bit of money. We couldn't match the price because we just couldn't at the time. But they brought us in to sort of mark their homework. They might be a competitor, and they'll know who they are. But they would have. It worked so well for 12 months, and it was brilliant. They did such an amazing job. I drink with the boss now, and he's my competitor.
Look, it's interesting, Liam. What you know that what we do with ACS, what we do with other legs of the business, is all about third-party accreditation.
It is, yeah.
The value of third-party accreditation, not just for the client, but now, based on what you've just said, even for the contractor doing the works initially, that level of comfort that it offers.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a sounding board, and people are thinking, "Oh, you must be mad! Like you didn't try and beat the cost or something." But I was happy the job got done well, and it got done really well. I always say, we couldn't have done it any better than they did it. They're on par with us level wise of tested details, their application of the systems and stuff, and the way they worked. And if you're not going to use us, at least let us make sure it's done right for you.
I think that's got to be the key message, and a lot of the people that I speak to with the podcast, a lot of people I speak to in my daily life, the ones that seem to be thriving at the moment in what is just a fairly difficult industry the way that the world is, are the ones that are concentrating on doing the job properly, and concentrating on making sure that things are safe and sound, rather than screwing down to the last.
Well, I think that the race to the bottom is definitely a thing, but I think, like you said, with the surges of more clerical works and stuff, it's sort of making my life easier. Because, if I do get offered these sort of jobs or stuff like that, consulting jobs, I know I've got a clerk of works who's looking at it. I've got more pairs of eyes on it. It's not just down to me. And, having a clerk of works, a tested detail, a manufacturer that comes to site and says, whether it's Hilti, Protector, Rockwool, whatever, who says, right, that hole there needs this detail.
Yeah.
And then that's in the scope of works. It's painted by numbers. I think where our industry falls down is no one takes accountability. No one does the design properly. And everyone wants you to make it as you go along. Yeah. And then when the shit is the fan, it's like, well, I didn't know that.
Well, it can't. I mean, that fundamentally, what we're dealing with now, or the arena that we work in under the Building Safety Act, it should eradicate that. What you've just mentioned to me was a good illustration of an active golden thread. Yeah. You've got product information, you've got an approved design,
correct.
You've got an approved installer, and you've got third-party accreditation. Pull it all together, and there you go. I do a lot of work with building safety cases now. Yeah. Under the building, Gateway 2, Gateway 3 applications, safety case formation, etc., and so on and so forth. And it's unbelievably hard on legacy projects to get that information in the first place. Let alone
there's no O&Ms anywhere on stuff.
It's like frighteningly so in some instances. You speak to people
made out of no idea.
Yeah, and you sort of and then you have to fill in the gaps, and I think that's something that you do as well in terms of your surveys and whatnot. But it's I just want to go back a step. You mentioned like the reinsurgent of clerk of works. I think I'm really pleased you said that, because I, for one, and a lot of my colleagues have been trying really hard to sort of regenerate that level of interest in the clerk of works. And just before we came onto the podcast off camera, we discussed something I'm looking to do next year or later on in the year, which is to get more involved in the education sector and sort of make building surveyor candidates that are coming through their degree levels or even earlier aware of the role of a clerk of works, because in terms of that third-party accreditation, a clerk of works is one discipline that gets across most of it. And that's the interesting bit. When you talk about the golden thread, it's like, well, who can... Quite often, there's not a single narrative. Things are coming in from different directions. Things are running in tangents, and often things are happening at the same time. And who can pull all that together? I'm going to say that a clerk of works is a good person to do that, because they tend to look at every aspect of the job, whether it be building material, whether it be fire stopping, whether it be MEP works, things like that. But just dragging it all together. So I suppose, is that something you've
I benefited from when I was on site. So I remember building Manchester University when I was, I started on the tools like you from 16, 17. Yeah. Remember when we were apprentice joiners, 56 quid a week. You won 30 quid. And you still had more freedom you got now.
Well, yeah. Let's leave the economy out of it.
I had 56 quid a week. I give them 30. And I think I still had like 10 pints every Friday and Saturday. And still had change in the morning. But I remember having good relationships with them. So, with a clerk of works who was on site, and you'd go, you sure that should be there? And he'd advise you, and it's just sort of a safety net. I remember, and then obviously when I started doing bigger contracts and stuff, then you try and recommend to a client, for this small cost, for someone to oversee it daily. Clerk of Works to be here, he'll take accountability. And when they dismiss you, you think, I know why these projects go wrong sometimes. It's just a second. It's an experienced pair of eyes that I think most jobs need.
Yeah, a lot. I've said it before. I'll say it again. A lot of it, in my experience, comes down to cost engineering. A clerk of works is deemed an expensive asset until they're needed. And design and build contracts, JCTs, they do create a level of accountability, but there's nothing quite like having that overview. I don't think.
No, I wouldn't hesitate if I was one of my clients. And I've got a lot of my clients to start doing it, and they've taken on board. So
yeah, good. Well, no, it's important. What's the some interesting questions now to get to pique people's interest? What's the worst thing you've seen in 2025? Don't say where it was. You'll be careful with censorship. But what's the worst thing you've seen that made you think, hang on a minute?
An establishment in Manchester.
You don't even have to say where it is.
I puts on shows, and the fire stopping's that bad you can see through the stage from underneath the plant room.
Wow. Okay. And that's a building that I won't.
It's a building I won't let my daughter go in, but I've notified. So it's getting sorted now, thank God. But it was the scariest building I've ever seen. Yeah.
That's a hot, I'm basing it some sort of where you watch a show or whatever. But so that's a lot of people, right?
Thousands who go in there and being able to see through the floorboards from a plant room with no fire-rated ceiling and pink foam everywhere. It made me a bit nervous, and then I told my daughter, you won't go in that place anytime soon. But the client was proactive. Within 2 weeks, we made it compliant. That's what I loved.
So that gap there, then. So you've got a client that's obviously not trying to do it, but it comes from a place of I don't want to say naivety, but
all their previous FRAs, and this is the thing sort of in our industry, and I think this is it's like building control. You get one on a good day, you see someone to help, and you've got one on a bad day who's been kicked out by his wife and can be a bit of a dick. And that's the same thing with FRAs.
Same thing for everyone, isn't it? Your subjectivity is based on individual.
Well, that's it. So they're FRAs, and I went back for the last 3 years FRAs, and they all contradict themselves. So the client wasn't being naive, or not, they were just not being guided right. Because I don't think, and I think a lot of this, I don't think the people doing the FRAs really wanted to, say what was really what. I think it was just continuity. They're just badly advised, I think.
So variable advice is one factor.
Yeah.
Building owners aren't, well, they are now, but they were never obliged to have a full understanding. They were a landlord, whatever. So there was always that gap. Obviously, that level of accountability changes now under the Building Safety Act. But obviously, talking about this legacy work, it's interesting, isn't it? Because how many other scenarios are there like that where someone actually wants to have it right, but they just haven't been advised properly?
I think a lot. I'd say I'd put it more down to bad advice than clients not wanting to do it. Once you show it in black and white in a report, or you got a door that you can fit your hand underneath in an hotel, the client is aware of it. They'll do everything they can.
They do swear to fix.
But it's just like you say, we've done this for years. No one's brought it up for years, etc., etc.
Yeah,
you can't put it on the emphasis of the building owner. It's a lot of it's the advice they've been given.
Which is, it's great because seemingly they can get the right advice now from people like yourself. But that, again, it does leave big gaps because, short of knowing where to find that advice, it's sort of how do you manage.
And I think that's hounded by sometimes a race to the bottom. We do fire door surveys. We've been undercut the other day. A well-known company, said they can do fire door surveys for £6 a door.
Wow.
What's it going to be on? Back of a fucking milk box.
Well, it has to. The survey is one thing, but the way that the information is presented, preserved, updated.
I've seen the surveys and they don't tell you anything.
Yeah, that's the danger.
But the client remember them.
That's the danger because I'll look at this now from a Building Safety Act perspective. When we're putting a gateway 3 applications together, or more specifically when you're doing a building safety case for legacy work, so HRB that's been registered thereafter. A lot of the information we get is like that. So you get a fire door survey, and it's not complete. Let's say that. So you look at it, and it leaves space for error, and it's like, well, no, we have to make a conscious decision then as the consultant.
Yeah.
Is that enough information?
Yeah. Is it detailed enough?
Is there room for error there? And obviously, if there's room for error, then it's not. And then we have the unfortunate pleasure of then going back to our client and saying, look, I appreciate you've already bought this.
Yep.
But you need to redo it, because as your consultant, we're saying this leaves you vulnerable.
That happens quite a lot.
It does. From my perspective, it happens far too often, and it's not just fire doors. I took that as an example from your narrative, but there's lots of examples where there's huge gaps in the information on the legacy stuff.
I think it's
less so on the new stuff.
Yeah, I think you just get what you pay for these days.
I think you do, but I argue it from the consumer perspective. That's unfair on them. If you're a and I use the term loosely, but if you're a layperson in terms of compliance, and you're buying a product, and that product is sold as the same thing, then why would
you're not going to know, are you?
You don't, and that's the importance of moments like this. Because so my next question is, what does LMG do that others don't? What should we be getting as a baseline standard from any survey, not just a fire door survey?
I think a lot of our testimonials and stuff sort of point out that we're reactive for stars. You can always get hold of us, and I didn't realise how much a big thing that was until we asked for some testimonials of some clients, and every single one out of all 12, and probably 9 of them said always contactable.
Yeah,
and I didn't realise that was such, because I'm not client side, so I didn't realise that was me answering my phone 24 hours a day, going to meetings, being the first person on site, being the last person on site, being that face. I didn't realise how much that meant to my clients.
Yeah,
I didn't know they were sort of buying from me. I thought they were buying from because they just needed stuff done, but I didn't realise that meant a lot. That I was the first person on site and the last person on site, and we're very good at updates, and because we're a one-stop shop, every single lad who works for us, they've worked for me for years. They see the same faces, the same people pricing, the same people doing the project management, the same waste removal people. It's all very.
So to summarise, and I agree, I'm a big advocate of communication. I think communication is almost everything when it comes to contentious issues. The ability to bring things down to a workable level, have a sensible conversation, explain the need. I'll come back to it. There's a lot of hostility sometimes. People, why do I need that? I've already got it. I've got this. And the ability to say, well, these are the reasons why.
Yeah.
You need to understand that actually this leaves you vulnerable. Whilst you've got it, it leaves you vulnerable. Consistency is a second thing. I see a lot of success in consistency, whether it be on the surveying side, on the contracting side, on the construction side. A lot of the people who we work for have created sort of systems of work, consistent systems of work, and they maintain that, and that allows them to benchmark the standard, and that's incredibly important. And then also you've got the knowledge base, you've got the experience, you've got the qualifications and all that jazz. But and they're obviously important, but you can have those without the other two, and it won't work.
Yeah,
you've got to be able to be relatable, conversational, and approachable.
I think what I was getting, and I was out with a couple of clients, we took some clients out the other week, and they said, you're one of the only companies who do what they say they're going to do. We say we're going to do something, we do it. There's no middle ground. We do exactly what we say we're going to do. If we're going to be there on Monday and we start a job, it's there.
Yeah.
If when your ram's over by Friday, you want a quote turn around in 24 hours. We say everything on 10. It don't matter if it's the Taylor Wimpey schemes we're going in Scotland. I'm still there once a week.
So we'll add reliability to the list. But yeah, I think that some great traits. Obviously, doing you well, and I'm pleased to hear it. And I hope that we can get the past to catch up with the future. I think looking at it holistically across the board, we seemingly, based on our conversation so far, we've got some fairly significant issues in the legacy world with buildings that were built.
Very much so. And I think, obviously, because of building safety yourself, we do a lot for property management companies. and they have to go back to the original developer. They've either gone bump or they don't want to engage. That leaves that building still unsafe for probably 6 to 12 months while they go through court. That's something we really need, because property management companies in Manchester, their hands are tied. And, you've got directors of apartment blocks who bought their apartments with good intentions, and then they're getting hit with Section 20s, they're getting hit with bills. You need to pay 40 grand for the cladding. Well, I bought this and no one said that it wasn't safe. And I think it's very unfair for tenants, owners, but I also think it's very unfair on the landlords themselves, because, they're the ones that end up in court if anything happens.
Financially, it seems unjust, and also, but probably more importantly, sleeping in a building that you don't feel safe in is just. Look, it's got to be fixed.
Yeah,
I know you're part of that solution, as am I doing my role. And I just hope that we continue on this trajectory of getting it done. The fact is that you're busy. That's good news.
Yeah.
Everybody, your competitors are busy, which is less good news for you, but good for everybody else.
Yeah, and there's plenty of food out there.
And I'm seeing massive improvements, but I think the scale of it is still to be determined.
Correct.
It's just it's
scary.
Funnily enough, I was on a project yesterday, and it's a recladding project. It's been looked at in great depth, and we started taking some of the existing panels off and going a little bit deeper rather, it's not what we thought it was, and
Never is.
You don't really understand until you get there. And we've got so many of these, so it's great. It's great to be a part of the solution, but
but then you also sort of feel guilty because you're sort of not profiting off it, but it's like because sometimes you wish there wasn't a sort of a need for us to be here as much, because there's so many unsafe buildings. It's like, I don't know the last building that's compliant I've seen. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
From hotels to care homes to ECUs to, MOD sites,
Yeah.
I'd love to just go there and go, you don't need me.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah. I'd get out of my car, put my boots on and go, fire curtains, your doors. No. Yeah, but I'll just get back in my car, thank you, take care. I'd love that sometimes.
That brings me to another interesting point. So obviously, as I've already alluded to, a lot of the new works that we're doing now, a lot of the new developments, they're good. We're looking at the fire stopping throughout the construction phase. We're looking at the level of detail tied into the strategy. You've got a complete circle, you've got the full circle, and it looks good.
The collaboration I think you're doing now, so it's good.
Early collaboration, consistent collaboration, proper record keeping, all the things that you need. The
traceability,
and it's only getting better. Certainly from the perspective of myself, with some of the contractors I'm working with. We are definitely working hard to create this very, very clear narrative, golden thread through to completion. However, the point is, that's when they're new.
Yeah,
that's great. But then, how often should a landlord get a standard survey done?
Well, obviously you got your biannual fire door checks, which are done every 3 or 6 months, depending. And then you got fire risk assessments every year. That's mandatory. But that, as long as they're done right, they'll highlight any issues. And it'll say, on most FRAs, it'll say, full fire stopping survey required, or we advise to get someone accredited to come and look at the doors. Yeah. Once that's on their desk, you've got duty of care, the landlord, owner, client, then needs to be struck.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse that, for 3 years in a row you didn't know you had non-compliant doors, because you have been told.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We have been told, and I think, as I say, moving forwards, since 2022, but certainly in the projects we're involved with now, we try to, with our clients, or we don't try to, we do with our clients, have quarterly stakeholder meetings.
Right.
So we're monitoring, any change control plans, any notifiable works, etc., so on and so forth. We're making sure that that's been completed to the full and proper standard. But then to maintain accountability with the PAPs, the APs, building managers, etc. We hold quarterly stakeholder meetings just to make sure that there's sort of a backstop on that.
That's good.
And I think that's something that's going to, you'll see when it becomes not new works, based on your application as you're working onto legacy stuff. You will be required to, you submit your surveys, your reports. They're going to be a sort of a very necessary part of a building being deemed safe in the future.
Yeah.
So it's good. I mean, it's good. It's sort of, and the reason I say that is because I can sort of see the past merge with the future now. It's sort of
a client local who built them tower blocks, they've already had compartmentation surveys done 6 months after they finished, and they've had a full fire door survey, which is probably $2,000, just to double check,
double down.
Never mind the accreditation that they got on the third party. Everyone being happy, me being happy. First 6 months, they've got a survey done.
I mean, it's music to the ears, isn't it?
I love it because they're just going, we're just double checking. I'm thinking, that's the sort of.
And I think it's interesting. The first 6 months makes a big difference. You go from doors being fitted and open and closed 3 or 4 times to doors being open and closed.
Heating's on, everything's swallowed up, nothing closed anymore.
People are slamming doors, and people are, in and out, and
correct.
The odd mishap, whatever. Locksmiths have been round, someone's lost the keys. All these different scenarios. But it obviously commercially challenging to have a survey done at such high frequency. But I like an early intervention. I think that's a good thing.
I quite like that. I think they're going to do it every year now going forward, so can't complain at all.
Yeah. Obviously, Liam, in what we do, we've got to be careful about what we talk about, what we don't talk about. But I'm always interested to ask people, such as yourself, and you sort of touched on it just a few minutes ago in terms of the race to the bottom. Have you got any examples of where people have put commercial before compliance and the effects of that?
Only a couple of weeks ago, we did a tender, and then one of our competitors came in 40% cheaper.
Wow!
Which, if I knew, and I went back through my figures and my estimate, you couldn't have done the job for that. Never mind mainly profit on it. And then we got the phone call asking us if we would then sign their work off because they actually were accredited.
Phone call from who? The client?
Yeah.
To sign your competitor off.
Yeah. And I use the example of it was like catching my missus having an affair and asking me to take him home after it.
Well, yeah, that's quite the analogy.
That was the analogy I used to the client, and the client went, "Is that a no?" Then I went, "That's a no."
That's a no.
But the cheek.
It is cheeky,
It
but
took 2 weeks to put a tender in.
I'm struggling to get past the fact that wasn't
due diligence.
Yeah, is it not too good to be true? If you've got a 40% difference,
40%
on a single application of work,
because they asked me if I could match it, so I knew the price had come in at. And even once I did the email explaining, I went open book then. So I went material cost of this, labour cost of this, prelims of this, and I went. You can understand there, they can't buy the materials for what they've come in at.
So they were a loss anyway.
And they were like, well, they seem confident. And I just had to say, no problem. And then when I got the phone call to sign off, then, needless to say, that job's not signed off.
Which is worrying, right? and it's I mean, it's to be honest, it's annoying, isn't it? Because we've got all of this provision now for people to record a competency. People to
PQQ, we've covered that.
But where is it? So it was all based on money.
Yeah, because I did explain. I said we did a PQQ, and we had to put our accreditations on it. Did they not do the same? It's someone we've used before. That was their excuse. And again, in our industry, we've always done it this way. What's wrong with it now? I've used them before. We've never had any complaints. It's that sort of lame attitude that gets people in trouble, I think.
Yeah. So how do you fix that? I mean, not you as an individual, but as an industry standard, was that a HRB?
No.
Was it over? No. So this is the grey area, right? And I've talked about this with others in the past. In fact, someone speaking to Andy Bannister about this.
Andy Bannister.
Yeah. And we talked about the grey area. So we've got sort of fairly robust measures now of HRBs. So.
Yeah.
But then you've got what I would call MRBs, and I've made that up, but so like medium risk buildings which fall underneath this 18-metre threshold, but still quite tall.
Like HMOs or something like that.
Yeah, or whatever it is. It doesn't, the upshot is that whilst the Act covers everything, it doesn't enforce it as harshly, and
it doesn't.
You end up with situations like this because the due diligence seemingly, and I don't know when this was, and don't tell me because it's probably best we keep it vague, but seemingly the due diligence wasn't required whereas it would have been otherwise under an HRB protocol. So
I think it would have been more. I think it would have been a lot more strict here.
So, but that doesn't, that still leaves us in the same problem, because if you've got a building that sits at 16.5 meters, which would be weird, but if it did, so does that mean that you just pay your money, you take a chance? What happens? I think it's like until everybody embraces the fact that the Safety Act and its protocols and its need for competence and accountability is not just for HRBs, it should be a sort of an overarching application. Yeah. You're always going to have that problem.
Yeah, I just think we're seeing a lot more. I keep repeating myself when it comes to race to the bottom, but we get undercut quite a lot, because the clients are honest, and we're not, I'm not the cheapest, but we're not the most expensive. We're sort of in the medium, but it's just every man and his dog thinks because they can use a mastic gun, they can do fire stopping.
Well, we know that's not true, don't we? I think, what would you like to see is change then? What would assist you to be able to get a considered tendering, knowing that it's an even and fair platform?
I think it's getting there. For the example this year, I know I keep saying it, but there's only been a couple of times this year where we've been massively undercut by someone who's trying to make a reputation. So a lot of contractors, what they'll do is they'll make a loss on the first job because the client will dangle a carrot, we're not horses, don't dangle carrots. and I've had clients do the same thing, to me, well-known clients who will go, if you do this one at cost, you can have the next 5 blocks. Well, I've still got more wages to pay. I've got an office to run. Why would I do that at cost for the hope of something else? So it's also some of the times the client's fault, because they'll try and get contractors in to try and make a bigger profit margin on the first job, sort of show off to him and try and encourage him in, come and do it, do it. I think a lot of our industry is ego. To say, I am on that new build in town, even though the guy who's on it is making no money. They like the ego, whereas I don't have an ego when it comes to jobs.
The thing that bothers me is, and obviously I sit in a different camp because commercially I've got no interest in the finance side of it. I want compliance and safety, right? But if you've got somebody doing works at cost, and it doesn't take much for that cost to escalate. You can't even control it, can you? Your supply chain can be variable. Your labour, you could have an issue with labour. Someone might fall ill, or a group of people might fall ill, or access or whatever, and you've got to buy more expensive labour. So all of a sudden you're working at a loss, and it would be remiss of me to not suggest that someone working at a loss has got the same level of interest in that project as if they are making a profit. Maybe that's unfair, but I'm going to say it anyway. So what that says to me is, are we by cost engineering again? Reducing the likelihood of fully compliant buildings?
Yes.
And I would suggest we are.
Yeah.
That has.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah, but actually, exactly that. But it concerns me, because you could apply that to the new build works. Yeah. And I think that's probably largely what you're talking about. And that does worry me. As someone who sits here on this platform, as a clerk of works, as someone that's involved in Building Safety Act consultancy, as a warranty auditor, as an ex-building control body, a building control inspector, that there's nothing good about that scenario.
No, and unfortunately, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of. We're condemning buildings that were done 18 months ago. 18 months ago. That people have still used backing foam as a backing material.
Right.
Pig foam that was meant to be used to hold around the door frame. They've used it on the PVC pipe 18 months ago. A well-known competitor of ours who are absolutely massive. And I had to send it to their director and said, what your engineers are doing. And
so that you're talking about pipe penetrations.
PVC pipe penetrations where you really should have used a wrap, bat, collar or graphite, depending on the size of what I'm up to.
Yeah.
There, lad. And this is how honest I am. The competitor who I'm talking about is, 5 times bigger than us. Instead of, putting it on LinkedIn, whatever them idiots do, I would never do that. I took a picture, and there was a label on it where I said, I'm giving you the chance to fix this.
Yeah.
Before, we put a price in. I just want to give you some grace. Do you know what your engineers have done? And they come and started it. But 18 months, the mastic was still wet, and I condemned 32 risers on a new build job.
Yeah.
So it's past the latent defect period. No one would have noticed that the risers were non-compliant, which they should have. I don't know who signed it off, building control or whatever. And then when I come in to do the survey for the client, he was mortified. But luckily enough, because of how big that fire protection contractor is, they come and put all them right for free.
And it shows that, well, and good, and so they should, but it does show that level of disconnect between the people running the business and the people planning the works. And I think that's something that needs to be changed. Unfortunately, accountability is without prejudice. It runs across the entire company. Yeah. But it's interesting. Look, I think there's a lot of work to do, isn't there? There's still a long way to go.
I think we're going to be on the slog for a good 10 years. I don't think, and we've even looked possibly next year. I'm going to sort of upskill a little bit. I've got some ASFP stuff to do. I need to keep on top of everything. My office is all going into new training, stuff like that. We're in a big year to sort of upskill. Where we might look at cladding projects and looking at what we need to, because we get offered cladding all the time and we always turn it down and pass it over. So,
it's when you say offer cladding, remediation works.
Remediation works, yeah. From cladding inspections to, but even that, more than I do. I've not really looked into it. Is that still a grey area? Do people have tested details now, or do they just D&D contracts?
Well, so cladding's just not the mic. Cladding is an interesting one because you there are tested details, but obviously the substrate. We went through a phase of just recladding ugly buildings, what we now consider ugly buildings, reinforced concrete buildings or whatever, and the way that it was done in some instances, it's criminal, quite literally. Yeah. So you can get to a point where you've got tested details, but it's hard work. And I work with a lot of very, very good fire engineers that have taken on this arduous task of developing solutions to some of these scenarios.
And they put the names on them.
Yeah, but they're creating designed applications that work
with a manufacturer. So hand in hand, the design, the manufacturer signs off. All you need is engineers to fit.
Yeah, and then as a clerk of works, we would make sure that the application against those benchmarks, etc. The problem you've got is, with the best intention in the world, if you could do, intrusive surveys.
Yep.
FRAEQP work, which you're well accustomed to.
Yeah.
And you get to see the bits that you see, but what you can't do as part of that process typically is go and rip the whole facade off.
Nope.
So you get isolated pockets of information, which is great. By the time I get involved with it, we then do go and rip the entire facade, or the contractor does, and we watch them do it, rip off the entire facade. And it's it's variable. You've got different slab edges, you've got different lines,
different gradients, different thicknesses,
and all of a sudden, all that hard work that's gone into the design
is now start again.
It's not redundant because the elements that it applies to are still good, but you've then got to make adjustments. But it's not a case of going, I'll just use that one. You've got to go back and revisit. I'm not jealous of that position at all, because
you taught me how to do a cladding company.
It's it's good and it's great work when you leave one of them projects and you go, do you know what, that's been done. It's been done right. That building was unsafe. Now it's safe. That's a fantastic achievement, but it is inherently difficult to achieve.
Right.
So I think it's something to consider. And I would say that if you don't want it, don't do it, because I'm not talking about you in particular, but it needs a lot of attention, an approach that people genuinely want to make it right. If they don't, it just doesn't work, and you end up with huge problems within the construction phase, and then we become more annoying because we're in a very fortunate position. We don't have to accept anything other than what we believe to be correct.
Yes, I know that very well,
and we stand behind that because that's the purpose of us in that scenario. So it's interesting, Well, I'll say it like this: there's some people very good at it, some people still. Do
you find that people try and pull the wool over your eyes a little bit?
Less so now. I go back 5 years. I mean, I've one of the biggest things was you'd walk around a site, and if there was a piece of plyboard leaning against the wall, it's probably leaning there for a reason. You'd go and move it, and you'd find a big gaping hole behind it, or the rotten steel, or whatever it was. Less so now. I think I do think there's been a dynamic shift now in people's attitudes towards building compliance, but it's not fully resolved, and it won't be fully resolved. I think 10 years is fully not too far off. I would like to think it of less, but I think it may be 10 years or more to get to that point, and that's on the basis that we improve from this point on, and everything from this point on is good.
Yeah.
And 10 years to catch up with the legacy work. My only doubt with that is that we only can fix the... Well, no, I think the money... Look, we live in a world full of people, and those people need places to live. Yeah. And there's a whole... I don't want to go too far off on this tangent because we'll end up talking about politics, and that's not what this platform's for. But that there has to be a solution. Yes. We can't leave people in dangerous buildings for too long. So what that solution looks like is anyone's guess, but I'm confident that there is one way or another, or I'd like to think there is. I'm hopeful, let's say that.
Yeah.
But we can only fix what we know about. That's my biggest concern. Yeah. And unless there's a sort of an initiative to just go and check buildings for the sake of checking them.
That's why I can say I don't struggle to get out of bed in the morning. I love this industry. Yeah. I could do this. I could do this without the plaudits of owning a business. I just enjoy making things right. And I get up at 5 in the morning. I'm like that. I just think there's something we can get done today. That's why I'm always pretty positive. And that's why we're never downhearted. If we do compartment age survey at a block in Manchester and we don't get the work, at least I provide the information. So it's not like, why are we not getting the work? I am happy to do just the surveys, nationwide, if you do. And then you've got the information. If you use someone else, as long as it's done right. Like we're never better about not getting the work. I just like providing the information. There it is in black and white. You've got a pin where your location is. You've got pictures of the issue, and you've got a solution. Yeah. I've given you everything you need there. You've got duty of care. I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Be part of the solution.
Yeah.
I wish everyone was being part of the solution.
Yeah.
And I say that with a tongue in cheek because most of the people I do work with are, I'm surrounded by a group of fantastic professionals that we've all got a sort of a similar application of our work, but unfortunately we've got a lot to fix.
Yeah, it's yourself indecisiveness is the mother of all fuck ups, isn't it? It really is. I say to my staff, or my engineers or surveyors, and say, look, you'll never get in trouble if you make a decision.
Yeah.
Come with solutions, don't come with problems. Rather than hiding it or delaying it or trying to work it out for 3 days. Come to me straight away and go, what do you think of this? Boom, let's make a decision. Let's get a fire engineer on site. Let's get an FRA sorted. Let's get building control there. There's always ways to fix things. You just need to get the right team around you.
And communicate.
Talk.
We go
Talk.
Full circle. Talk. Communicate. Yeah. Talk about
we do a lot of heritage stuff. We're doing a hall in Sheffield at the moment. Then the first day, once we've done the fire doors there, there's 36 heritage doors, which are hundreds of years old. I got heritage there the week after with building control. Yeah. I went, what do you want me to do to each door? I want to be as gentle as I can because this door's 200 years old.
Yeah.
And we talked through the process. And the application got approved within 2 days to fully fire stop because you knew we were being sympathetic to the building and to remediate most of the doors and replace only 2 of the listed ones. Now, if you'd have gone in there all guns blazing saying, we need to replace this, you'd get conflict back. I think you've always got to, people are people.
There is, and you've got to find a balance. But again, I think just not to bang the drum, but I will. And you as part of that process, seemingly you've communicated with the right parties. I'm guessing you had conservation. I'm guessing
definitely
building control. I'm guessing you had the client there, and that communication found a viable route to compliance that didn't overburden the heritage of that building. No. And that's important. I mean, it's a whole other conversation, heritage, but which we can have again.
To the existing building, and you've got to work as a team.
I agree. What have you got for this year?
More training, especially myself, upskilling everyone. We've got a couple of massive arenas to do, which are beautiful. I've worked on them for 6 months. It's the same client in the hotel for. So the only arenas as well. So what we've done is now we're offering a full service. So anything on a fire risk assessment, fire alarms, fire strategy, wayfinding signs. We're now going to take the whole FRA. You give me an FRA, give me a month and I'll get everything done on it. We're offering that service for next year. A one-stop shop. We're a one-stop shop for fire doors and complementation. Now we're going to be a one-stop shop for everything, which is fire risk assessment. Based on this. We've got a couple of possible more works abroad for the MOD, which I'm not going to say too much about.
No, you better not.
But Gibraltar was fun. Yeah, them monkeys weren't.
I was going to say
the monkeys nicked me out. But it was a good 3 months there. Logistic-wise, it was a nightmare, but it was a beautiful job. And again, the accommodation now for the people there is now compliant. It seemed like a nightmare. No one else would touch it, but we loved it.
We got through.
Yeah, we love it. We love this game, don't we?
We have to. we have to. If you don't love it, you can't stick it, can you? Nice and chat. Look, Liam, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for coming on. Thanks for giving us a bit of an insight to your world and discussing some of the more difficult points around compliance. And I think it's something we can definitely do again in the future.
Nice one. Top man.